In this episode, we watch Jen as she sews her first tuck and roll pleat. She'll walk you through the steps in case you want to try this on your own upholstery projects. Watch it all here on Motorhead Sweethearts.
Okay, so these are going to be your ingredients to make these pleats. I got this at Joann's, and it's just a nice thick piece of canvas, and this is going to be the backing of your pleat. Then you want to take your good piece of fabric. So I actually, again, I don't know, you guys might have watched that video, but we went to SMS Fabrics and got the original fabric that came with our car. So we have this piece and we have this piece. So we want our pleats to be 4 inches across. So you're going to take your ruler. And again, this is just a test piece because we're going to figure out how long we need our pleats to be when we add our piece of foam in it. So we're going to measure 4 inches across. Okay, so the width of this is 4 inches. So that's what you want to do, and you can see those are going to be the start of our pleats. One thing that I did forget to do, which we'll do it on this side since this is not a full pleat, but you want to go a 1/2 inch like we've been talking about, because that's where we're going to connect these 2 pieces of fabric. So now measure just a 1/2 inch. Okay, so this is just your seam allowance, so that's not actually going to be there. So you can see we have our seam allowance and then our 3 pleats here. Okay, so now, I'm going to flip this around so you guys can see it. Now we're going to take our fabric and we're going to line it up along, not at the 1 inch, but just past our seam allowance so that we have that inch. Because when we put it into our sewing machine, you will see that. Okay, so you're going to line this up. And now, I know usually when we sew, which is going to be a little bit different, usually when we sew, we use the piece of fabric face down, and then this, so we put the 2 front faces up like this, normally. But because we are doing these pleats, you're not going to do that. You're going to leave this piece that you just measured out with your square, you're going to leave that up, and leave the front side of your fabric up. And you're going to line that up right at the line that we made for that seam allowance. So right here. Okay, and now we're going to take this into our sewing machine. Okay, and I'm going to take my little guide again that I bought and showed you guys. Okay, so now you can see I have my 2 pieces stitched together. And now this is how we're going to figure out how long our piece of vinyl or fabric is going to need to be. So now I'll take you back over here. Okay, so now you have to cut your piece of foam. Mine is pre-cut already, but it should be measured to the same width of your 4 inches here. Okay. Now there is a little trick that I didn't see people do online, but it's something that's easy for me. So I take a little bit of the spray adhesive, and this one is not as strong as like a regular spray adhesive that I used for the door panels, but this is a little lighter so it can easily be peeled off and moved if I want to rearrange my fabric. So I'm just going to put a light layer on that. Let it get a little tacky. And then you're going to lay it, and you want to lay it right against your seam here that you made. So lay it as close as that seam as possible. But it doesn't move around when I'm trying to line up my pieces of fabric. So now, we're gonna roll this over. This is the tuck and roll part. This is the roll. And you wanna line it up to the line that you scored here at that 4. Just line that up. And then you want to take your pencil. I'm going to use a darker marker. And then you want to just score that. So now you're gonna take your ruler and you're gonna measure out to see how much with the foam that folded over. So it looks like instead of 4, we're gonna wanna measure the pleats on our fabric or our vinyl, whatever you guys are using. You wanna measure that at about 4.5 inches. So this part, it has 4, and when we tuck and roll our fabric over, we're adding 1/2 inch to that. Okay? And then once you do that, I'm gonna sew it up now and we're gonna see how it looks. And you should see the first start of our pleat. So let's do that next. Okay, so now we're gonna come over to our sewing machine and sew this pleat together. So then you're gonna take your piece of fabric and fold it over again. And now that you drew that line for your fabric, you can kind of see it, my fabric's a little sparkly. But you wanna take that line and line it up with the line that's on your fabric, like that. And we're going to sew it. Okay, and then if you look over here, we have our first pleat. And then you can see that it hides the stitching. And you can see where we folded our fabric down the line. So then you're gonna follow that along the rest of your lines. So you're gonna get another piece of foam, put it here, have your line scored, fold it over, and sew it all the way along the line. If it's hard for you to have the foam in there while you're sewing it, you can also line it up with your measurements and you can sew right through without the foam in there. The note on that is that I have tried that before and it got really difficult trying to feed the thick foam because this foam against this like rough fabric on the inside did not easily slide in there for me, and it was more aggravation than it was by just taking my fabric, putting it in there, and then sewing along the line. So I do have another sample here. So this is another sample of mine, but this is kind of what it starts to look like. So you can tuck and roll that in there, and then you start to see your pleats. And once you get the hang of this method, I think this is probably the most fun thing that I've learned while I've been trying to learn upholstery. And I really think that you guys will think it's fun too once you start getting the hang of it. So again, that's how you do our tuck and roll pleating. There are other pleat methods that I showed you, like on the door panel, where you could just score in or trace in lines here and then just sew along them and put your full piece of foam in there instead of cutting them out individually. But this, I really liked the way this looked. It made the seat look a little bit more plush, a little thicker. So that's why I went with the tuck and roll pleat method. If you have any questions, drop a comment below or send us an email at motorheadsweethearts@gmail.com and we can help you out with any upholstery or car project that you might be needing help with. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Bye!